Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be jumping right back into Sarah's story. Go ahead and check out episode one if you haven't already. You're going to want to do that because that's laying the groundwork for what's going on in episode two. We're going to pick right back up where we ended off, and I'm going to see you on the other side.
I did graduate. I still did well, but I actually did fail a class. I was an idiot and took 5 classes my last semester of high school. Um, so online Spanish 5 did not go well. But yeah, I graduated, did well. I got into Chapel Hill State, UNCW, and USC in Columbia, South Carolina. So Carolina was my dream school at the time. So I got into all these schools, but at this point I was partying. I think like growing up and being told that it was like playing Russian roulette if I ever chose to drink or use drugs, other drugs,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing like my mom struggles with alcohol, I didn't start drinking until I was 20. But like I started doing all this other stuff. Um, Smoked weed for the first time, did not get high, but like instantly, probably like the next day, started smoking again, and then like fell in love. Um, there wasn't much I didn't not do within those first few years of substance use.
So if you're willing to say, because you keep saying other stuff, I mean,
Yeah,
not to
so
minimize what you're saying, like weed is not a big deal where I'm from in Massachusetts.
yeah, I don't mind. I'll
So
speak on it.
yeah, yeah,
Well, when I say drugs, first of all, alcohol is a drug. So
yeah, obviously. But you
I know a lot of
say,
people say it. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I pills, like I would pop whatever pill.
oh,
I loved sedatives.
mhm,
So Xanax, any type of opioid or opiate, cocaine,
mhm,
acid, mushrooms. I mean, there really wasn't much I didn't do. At the time when I first started using substances, heroin, meth, crack, those were like the no-nos.
mhm,
Those were like if you're doing those, like you have a problem. Um I again, it's a societal thing, but even having a family history of addiction, for a long time I associated addiction and alcoholism with people under the bridge who are homeless
mhm,
and have a brown bottle or are smoking crack. Like that was
mhm,
my image of someone who has a problem. I
mhm.
knew that there are people who are functioning, but didn't I wouldn't say like I categorize those people as like truly having a problem.
And that wasn't you,
And
right?
that
You
wasn't
weren't
me.
that person with a brown bag or a
Correct.
crack pipe.
Yeah, I was like still a successful person, still like close with my family relationships had started to struggle, but like still close with my family, um still playing soccer, had friends, had my license, had some money. Um
You just didn't fuck up yet.
exactly.
You didn't
Yes.
get caught.
Yes. So I will go back a little bit and say that after my mom got her DUI, she got into ship shape really quick. She ended up going to treatment in Greensboro
Mhm,
when I don't know how old I was. I mean, it wasn't long after the DUI,
mhm,
but she got into treatment. Even within that year that she didn't have her license, I remember like going to church. I mean, there wasn't a lot of churches, but going to church in the Outer Banks and like playing in the nursery and then coming in and hearing people clap and like going on stage and talking. And like
mhm,
that's obviously Alcoholics Anonymous. Um
mhm,
so like growing up I knew like okay, if I choose to drink or do other drugs, I have a chance that I'm going to have problems. I knew like I didn't like what happened with my mom. And I didn't really care for my uncles who had issues. So I don't know, like that just changed with the being cynical, I guess, and being like not being able to handle things anymore, that I just chose to like give in and do it. Um,
I hear a lot of myself in you, Sarah.
yeah,
A lot of, the child of an addict. And you don't, for the longest time, you're resisting. You don't want to be them. And then
exactly.
something just breaks
Something
inside of
changes
you.
and you start to become them.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of hypocrisy within itself. Like, I'm not going to be this person. I hate this person. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, well, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
uh, but
You're
yeah,
drinking half a handle,
yeah,
like on a Wednesday.
yes. So I, I don't know where I was, but I started
You're
partying.
about 20 years old, right?
Yeah, I started partying a lot. My After high school, I went to Chapel Hill for a semester, and I ended up having a night. Well, things weren't going well. I didn't go to classes. I was partying. I was sleeping late. So my grades weren't great. I mean, to this day, I'm still academically eligible to apply for readmission at Chapel Hill, but I ended up not doing well the first semester, and I came home and like for winter break, and then I went back, and it was like a first the first couple weeks into the spring semester, and I told myself, like you've got to do different. You have to do better. You have to go to class. You have to try. So I had been trying, and I remember I had like a chemistry assignment due on a school night, and I was like, I really need a nap because I also was a huge nap taker my whole life. But I was like, you really need a nap. So I took a nap, and I woke up late and couldn't submit the homework on time. And I just like lost it. Like it just came down. It all came crashing down. And I was like crying in the bathroom in the dark while my roommates were all asleep. And there was this girl who would always get drunk and like mess with the fire alarms on my floor.
Hmm.
Did that, so everyone was awake, and my roommates were like, where's Sarah, where's Sarah? And they found me in the bathroom in the dark and were like, what is wrong? And I told them, like, I don't want to be here anymore. And they were like, okay, well, like, you can go home, like, you don't have to stay here. And I was like, no, I don't want to be here. And that was like the first time I think I ever like said out loud to another person, basically, like, I was really struggling, that like I was
Hmm.
having suicidal ideation. I had never made like an actual plan and like wrote out, like where my stuff was going to go and all this, or like written a note, but in my head, like I thought about it all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my roommate ended up calling her mom the next morning, and I guess she had basically stayed awake and like ended up missing her class at 8 a.m. the next day because she was so like scared
Hmm.
for me. And she ended up calling her mom, and my mom called her mom called my mom. And I went to class the next day, and I was like in a completely different mood, like super happy. Was like eating lunch in the
Hmm.
Agora, which is like in Granville Towers at Chapel Hill. And I go up to my room, and I'm talking to my roommate for a second. Next thing I know, there's a knock on my door, and it's my mom.
Hmm.
And completely shocked, like she basically is like, pack a couple bags and we're coming home. And there was no further discussion. I couldn't really argue. My parents were paying for school at this point.
Hmm.
So I ended up packing a bag, going home, completely like, I mean, misplaced anger, but so mad, like, didn't talk to my roommates after that, basically ever again.
Hmm.
And so that, like, spring semester, I entered therapy. I was on a psych leave from Chapel Hill. Um, my parents still didn't know. I mean, they had heard some stuff about drug use, but they didn't really know until I like chose to. And I think at the time my parents weren't letting me drive my car. I don't know, something along those lines. I took my mom's car and went to hang out with a friend who I had met earlier, and we smoked. And I came back, and at the time I wasn't like using eye drops and like being a cautious stoner.
Hmm.
Um, my dad came home and searched me in uniform, and I had acid tabs and Xanax pills and a bowl.
Mhm.
And so that's really where my parents knew, like, okay, she's not only struggling with depression and anxiety and is having suicidal thoughts, but she's got some really big drug issues going on. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of like where it really started. My I spent that spring semester like basically still partying, but like really fighting with my parents.
Mhm.
You know, I wasn't drinking quite yet, but I was doing pretty much everything else under the sun. And when I did start drinking, I blacked out the first time.
Mhm.
Ended up like punching my car, trying to box a guy I was at a house with. It
You kick
was
his ass or what?
I think he was like, "You need to sit down and leave me alone." No, I broke my bra strap in the process. Apparently, I was embarrassing, is how I'll say
How do you throw a punch that hard where you break a piece of fabric or like an
it.
elastic?
I mean, I think I was like pretty sloppy drunk too, on top of being blackout. So I don't think I could have like really messed him up. I didn't get into like the angry drunks until then. I think I was playfully boxing him.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, later on I got into the angry drunks where I probably could have really hurt somebody. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I'll try and speed it up a little because I know this is already a lot. Anyway, yeah, I blacked out, was like, oh, I'm never drinking again. Because alcohol was different, even from the first time. With alcohol, I didn't like have an innate tolerance. Like other stuff, I had like this crazy tolerance for it. I could do a lot of other drugs and like be fine. And then alcohol, it was like the first time I blacked out, like acted like a fool, and that was new for me. So I was on top of like knowing about my mom's alcoholism. I was terrified of alcohol. So I didn't drink again, I would say, for a little while.
Mhm.
Um, but then like whenever I did start drinking again, I was doing other drugs and drinking like all the time.
So you were
And
mixing them,
oh yeah, absolutely.
and how is
Um,
that with your not being able to really control yourself with the alcohol?
well, I eventually learned that cocaine or Adderall seemed to like keep me from blacking out.
Oh, that's
Um,
good. Mix a depressant with a stimulant.
yeah, and like I wouldn't black out. So that was my mindset on that. Drinking and Xanax, different story, would go to sleep or black out and not remember. I mean, I think my boyfriend and I like lost several days at one point from drinking, smoking weed, and taking Xanax bars. Um, but yeah, I ended up like taking that semester and just doing that, partying. And then I ended up going back to Chapel Hill in the fall and did a little better, but not really. Realized like I didn't have any friends there at this point, and I
Mhm.
didn't know what I wanted to do in life. So I was like, this is a waste of time and money. Came home, did worked full time, got my EMT basic. So for like a period of like 6 months, I actually had quit drinking and doing any other drugs.
That's
And
progress.
yeah, got my EMT basic, realized that I would get burnout in that profession, so I didn't do anything with it, just got certified. Um, ended up going to Cape Fear to play soccer for the women's team. So went to associate's degree school for 2.5 years, played soccer. I had started dating this guy who was definitely a pothead. Also was kind of like me when he would drink, and he was kind of unpredictable. Like within a 5-minute period, he could be like crying about stuff that had happened in his life and like being a depressed drunk to like being verbally angry and basically verbally abusive as if things are my fault. Um, and we were together on and off for like 3 years. And
Oh
I would
wow.
say that relationship was toxic all around. Like, I was emotionally manipulative, and I would kind of hang like my depression over him.
Hmm.
Um, and he was like verbally abusive and crazy when he was drunk, just like I was. And we would both like get angry when we were drunk and black out and act sloppy. And that relationship really exacerbated my drinking
Hmm.
and my partying, and really deteriorated my relationship with my family. They did not approve of him at all. There was so many phone calls to my parents late at night, like asking them to come get me, or like saying that there's an issue. I got a DUI when I was 22, so back in 20, I was convicted in 2015, but 2014. Um, Supposed to be a normal night out. I had actually we had smoked some weed at a friend's house. I had taken some Marinol that I had gotten from somebody, which is really only prescribed to people with cancer or HIV, so they can not be nauseous and eat. Um, Somehow I'd gotten those from a friend. Had
Why would
taken
you take those? I don't. Does that get you high, or are you just not trying to be nauseous?
No, yeah. I mean, they don't really get you high, but it is like synthetic. Uh, at this point, I don't even know. I want to say it's not THC, but it's a different.
Endocannabinoid?
It might be. I've kind of forgotten, but yeah, I took them to get high on top of smoking, and then we went out, and things were going well until like he started being verbally aggressive, and I just like got inwardly depressed, and so I ended up drinking. I took like 9 shots at the bar and drank a beer or something. He got kicked out of the bar for being an idiot. So while I'm like trying to pay the tab, he just starts walking home, which is a very long walk. And I was like, oh, he's an idiot. He's gonna get hit by a car. So I had driven to the bar, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go get him. So got this random kid at the bar who had bought me a drink. Went to get him, and then like we dropped him off on UNCW's campus, and we were almost back to our friend's house, and I get pulled over for drinking and driving. Um, I guess some like the Vice and a bunch of officers were doing a drug bust on a house in that neighborhood, and
Hmm.
so there was all these blue lights everywhere, and I guess they were waving at me to slow down, but I took it as stop. So I
Wow.
stopped the car in the middle of a 35-mile-per-hour road in this neighborhood, and the officer who I rolled my window down to was the head of Vice.
I was gonna say, was your dad?
No, no, he works in a different county. Um, so yeah, I roll my
But that
window.
would have been some shit, right?
Uh,
Poetic justice.
that would have been embarrassing. Oh, so yeah, I roll my window down, and the head of Vice like can instantly smell alcohol, and so like he starts questioning me. My boyfriend at the time is like basically blacked out, almost unconscious in the seat next to me. I went to like get my registration out of the glove box, and we had some marijuana in there and blunt wraps. And so like the officer didn't even have to search my car to find paraphernalia and drugs. So I get charged with 4 counts. I blew a .16 on site, failed sobriety test by all measures. Um, Turns out my boyfriend had been arrested by this officer several times, him and his sister. So they had some history. They like grew up, the two families grew up and knew each other. So I felt like was being rude to my boyfriend, and I was on the verge of blacking out. So I got really angry about
Mm.
how that was going, and basically became an asshole and was very disrespectful. So I got charged with possession and paraphernalia, DUI. I didn't get charged with destruction of property because I had apparently on the way to the station been blackout and been trying to kick the window out of the police car. Um, but apparently I didn't do enough damage to warrant being charged with that.
Good.
Yeah. Then when I get to the cell and like start sobering up, he's like, they're doing all the intake stuff, and he gives me a handheld phone so I can make a phone call. And I choose to call 911 and tell them that the officer who arrested me is being rude and disrespectful. So, and then I threw the phone across the cell when he like came and realized that I was calling 911. So I got charged with misuse of 911 as well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, but that's
I got
kind of
well, stupid.
yeah.
So I got charged with 4 charges. My first ever issue with the legal system.
First
I
ever. Are you saying that
Yes,
there's going to be more?
there's more.
Oh,
So
okay.
I did like that night. Actually, because I was so combative and ended up like blackout, crying and talking about killing myself. They put me in a turtle suit, um, which a turtle suit means that you can't have any clothes, you can't have a hair tie, you basically can't have anything. You can't even have like sanitary products if you're a woman and you're actively on your period. Um, because anything that could potentially be used to harm yourself can't be there. So I spent that, it wasn't even a whole night, but I spent whatever hours like in and out of sleep, crying, like in this turtle suit, naked. Um, the most humiliated or degraded I've ever felt. Like, not a good thing. I felt like I wasn't human. Um, just
Yeah, there
complete.
has to be a better way to deal with a mental health crisis
Yeah.
than putting someone like with all the police, with all the police I don't even want to say reform because there's no police reform going on. And, not to say anything against your dad, I don't know him, but like, I'm not a big fan of the current policing system. But
Yeah.
like, if you have someone that is saying that they're going to kill themselves, maybe you bring in a professional. You might need a professional like psychiatrist on
Yeah.
staff to talk them
Well,
down instead of making them wear a suit, turtle suit, whatever that means, and be ass naked in a cell where
yeah.
people can
Well,
look at them.
at least I was luckily like New Hanover County has individual cells, like there's no like double bunks.
Hmm.
And I was only in there for like not even a day. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But you also, with the age of cell phones and technology, we didn't have a home phone at this point, and the only numbers I knew were my boyfriend's and my parents. Like, and I
Hmm.
don't have you can't ask to access your cell phone. So I spent the amount of time I was in there. I got 1 hour because I was suicidal. I got 1 hour out of my cell.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, the other inmates have, I think, pretty much all day to be outside of their cell. So I spent that time trying to contact my parents, but I didn't have an account set up. Um, my parents had to go through the process of like setting up an account and putting money on the books for me to even like, I got that free phone call that I messed up by calling 911. And then I think I got one more call after that. And so I like couldn't get a hold of my parents for the first like 30 minutes of being out of my cell. Long story short, I ended up getting my parents bonded me out. Um, my I got in contact with my boyfriend. He had come to pick me up because I didn't know my parents had bonded me out. Um, or I knew they had bonded me out, but I couldn't get a hold of them and didn't know they were on the way. My mom was like, "If you leave with him," because I finally got a hold of her, and she was like, "If you leave with him, like we are done with you." Um, so ended up going home with my parents. It was actually the week of Thanksgiving. I think it was 2 days before Thanksgiving. Um, yeah, things were not good at that point. With my family, things were rocky with my boyfriend. He paid for my lawyer, which I will say is like probably the only truly awesome thing he's done for me. um, he paid for like my lawyer and everything. but I got charged. My dog died the day of Thanksgiving, so like 2 days after getting a DUI, my 17-year-old dog died, and my other dog had died like right before that. So it was a bad time in my
A lot of
life.
loss
Yeah.
around. Seems like that's a recurring theme.
Yeah. So I did a year without a license. I walked to work if I had to. I got lots of taxis and Ubers, and I was still dating my boyfriend, so he, you know, drove me a lot. Um, we were still drinking and using stuff together. He, that I know of, never got into like the truly, I don't want to say harder, but harder substances. But we partied a lot, and things never got better with that relationship.
Hmm.
Um, I ended up doing a year without a license. I had a blow box when I did get my license back. I did end up graduating with my associate's degree. Um, Now, then, like, after my boyfriend and I broke up for the last time, I had started hanging out with some new people, and so I met this girl I worked at a country club with, and she had access to heroin. Um, I didn't. I only did it a few times at that point, and I only ever snorted it. But things were not good. Like that was starting to hit my low. I wasn't with the boyfriend anymore, so I was super upset about that. Looking back, shouldn't have been, but I was. Um,
Hey, I mean, love makes you do crazy things.
yes, and that relationship within itself was just so toxic and negative. It was like a black hole. But yeah, I things weren't good with my family. Like they had pretty much hit their end. They were really tired of like the late night calls, and like they didn't sleep much. They were scared like they were gonna get a call one night that like I was dead in a ditch somewhere because
Hmm.
things were like that bad. I did call my boyfriend a lot when I would get blackout drunk and like need a ride. So he did kind of hang on a little longer. And but he was always very angry when he had to pick me up.
I mean, I can
Yeah,
understand that.
I don't blame him. So I I had gotten raped. I don't not too long after I got convicted with my DUI, I guess. It was like right after my boyfriend and I had broken up for the almost final time. Um, I went to a bar with a friend. I again drove, and I had a blow box, and I was intending to only go and not drink, but I was at a bar and they had gold tequila 1800, which was like my one of my things. Ended up getting blackout drunk. Um, got raped by the bar owner. Um, I will say, in terms of sexual assault, that consents, like, if you are intoxicated, especially blackout drunk, like, you cannot consent. So,
Yeah,
looking back, I don't know
I agree. I agree
how
with that.
much I might have egged it on, or even in the moment, maybe wanted to be in that situation. But in terms of legal and ethical standpoint, I was blackout. So I was raped. I would
Mhm.
not have consented had I been sober. Um,
Yeah, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want
no, it's fine. I actually pretty quickly I went to work the next day, but I was too drunk to drive my car. So I ended up going to work, but I was really hungover, and then like things started to hit me, and this sounds really bad, but I probably almost used the night before as an excuse to leave work and
That
for my
that does
parents to
not
not be mad
sound.
at me. Because my dad had to drive me to my car, and then once I couldn't start my car and I failed my blow test, he had to drive me to work and then go to work. So it wasn't until later that day when I left work, got an Uber, I like I just asked the Uber to pull over so I could throw up. That's how hungover I was. And then could finally start my car later on. That later that night or the afternoon when my dad got home from work, they were mad because of me the previous night, but I told them about the situation. And my dad actually works a lot with sex crimes. That's pretty much the main thing he does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he had kind of come to grips a little more with my drug use because for a long time he was pretty angry and disappointed because that was like something he worked actively against. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so he took it personally, I would think. Um, he kind of came to grips with like she has some mental issues and she's not a bad person. I
And
would say my
how
addiction.
did sorry to interrupt you. How did your father do with coping with that
Yeah.
in
So
terms of
his
going along with your I don't really know how to word this, but how long did it take your family to accept that you had not only an addiction but also kind of mental illness that was kind of feeding that addiction?
my mom understood like from the get-go. I
Hmm.
mean, we had to learn to cope with it, but she understood from the get-go that like it wasn't a choice. And like with her own family history of alcoholism and my dad's family history of addiction and mental illness, and then her alcoholism, like she understood it. Um,
Hmm.
she wasn't happy about it, especially when they would find weed in the house or I'd have it in the car, my car that was under their name. Like
Hmm.
that was a legal issue for sure, and could jeopardize both their professions. Um, but she understood it more so. My brother, not as much because he didn't personally go through it. My dad, he took it more personally and then coped with it and wasn't necessarily angry about it.
Hmm.
I would say he was more saddened about it. But I think my addiction issues helped him understand. I wouldn't say he was ever like, oh, this person uses drugs who I'm arresting, like they're a piece of shit. But for him, it was like, this is my job. Drugs are bad. You're using drugs. You're going to jail. And I
Hmm.
would say my addiction maybe helped him come to see like this person is having a crisis. Like they're probably not choosing to use drugs, at least not someone who's really far into addiction because they want to. They have a problem and they need
Hmm.
help. So I would say like my addiction probably helped him professionally to see that there's more to the story.
Hmm.
Um, And then with me being raped, I would say that that was especially hard for my dad in particular because he dealt with that all the time and he deals with victims of sex crimes. And so he helped me a lot. I refused to go to I had already showered that morning, so I refused to go to the hospital
Hmm.
and do a rape kit because at that point it was useless. But I did he helped me get in contact with someone in Wilmington Police Department, and I did file a report and met with someone at the Rape Crisis Center um, twice, and like did the whole official report. Nothing came to light with that because there just wasn't evidence, and obviously the suspect, his story did not match mine. And then my friend who I had been with was angry that I didn't want to be more than friends. So his story also did not corroborate mine. And so nothing ever came of the situation, but it is officially on file and that's what matters. I would say I probably didn't deal with being raped mentally, like I kind of repressed it, but I would say like looking back, I did work through it kind of quickly and came to understand like just because I wore like short athletic shorts and a low tank top to the bar, like I didn't choose that.
Wow. I think that episode 2 definitely started ramping up, and thanks to Sarah for sharing everything she has so far. Episode 3 um, is certainly going to be a little bit more. Um, I don't want to say exciting, but episode 3 has some some more details about Sarah's story that you're not going to want to miss. So I hope to see you there.